This week in movies, we're talking about Where the Wild Things Are. It's based on a extremely popular, prolific, possibly multi-award winning, I would assume, children's illustrated novel by Maurice Sendak that I think almost everyone reads in their youth growing up. I think it's required reading. It's like To Kill a Mockingbird for kids. Like we all have to read that book.
It's To Kill a Mockingbird for kids.
And it's
really thematically very similar.
The movie is written, co-written by Spike Jonze and Dave Eggers, who is also a very prolific writer in his own right. Heartbreaking work of staggering genius. We brought him up with he wrote the screenplay for Away We Go. And Spike Jonze directs it, so being John Malkovich, adaptation, movie that was in production for a while. I think.
Well, you actually walked into
many years ago.
There was a gallery that just happened to be on La Cienega, and Heather and I just stumbled in, and it was all production stills from Where the Wild Things Are, and hand-drawn designs and stuff, and some of them were dated in 2005.
Yeah,
and reportedly problematic production.
Yeah, it was supposed to come out in 2000. It's supposed to come out a year or two ago, and it went from one studio to another. It's at Warner Brothers now. I don't know where it started out, but yes, apparently there was a lot of issues with earlier cuts and too adult, too childlike. Anyway, it's about a the actor's name is Max Records. Is his name Max?
Yeah, the character's name.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So young Max runs away from home, and much like Alice in Wonderland or Wizard of Oz, winds up in this fantasy world inhabited by creatures created by Jim Henson, which for our younger viewers, which is crazy to think that they might not know. Jim Henson is behind a movie and TV series known as
Henson, not Jim
Henson Company.
Right. Jim Henson's not alive
with us anymore. Yes. But they are behind the Muppets movies and TV show and
Sesame Street,
Fraggle Rock, which these creatures are very similar to those big things in that.
But
show.
also, I mean, you haven't mentioned any of the other more realistic puppetry projects that they've been associated with over time, which pre-CG days, they were sort of the go-to guys to create creatures that you couldn't.
Labyrinth was, I believe,
even
Henson.
Jabba the Hutt. I mean, that's the kind of
right. But what I was just thinking was aesthetically that these things fall in suit with some of the things that we grew up with, like Fraggle Rock, more so than other stuff, and that there's a whole group of kids grew up with this book but never grew up with the Henson stuff. Yeah, I think maybe there are.
I love how we're
so no one knows anything. Let's talk about the movie, shall we?
Yes.
So Jeff, you mentioned at Comic-Con that this over all other things was the thing you're most excited for. Yeah. Now you've seen it.
I have.
What did you think?
Pregnant pause. And
impossibly high expectations for this film, and there's a lot to like. I like the movie. It didn't achieve the greatness that I hoped for with all that I had invested into, even the scenes we saw at Comic-Con. And maybe this has something to do with the fact that I saw so much of it before I saw it. But it just didn't achieve the pathos that I expected. There is a lot of wonderful things about being a kid, being a child, a lot of wonderful moments of vulnerability, which you don't often find in films, and it captures that sense of all those crazy emotions and that volatility that you have when you're a young boy, particularly, that kind of those wild swings from rage and energy to sadness and fear, and it does that really, really well. Ironically, I think I liked the period before we get to the island better than any of the stuff that happens on the island. And I don't know why that is. I think it felt truer, and I was emotionally swept away by some of the interactions he has with his mom at the beginning. And when we get to it's a very dark film. It's a very dark tonal place that it's set. I just wish I had felt a little more pathos.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. I kind of feel like I didn't see anything that was different than the trailer. I mean, I feel like there wasn't any. Like I walked out of the movie feeling exactly how I felt about the movie before I walked into the movie.
That's true.
As far as how much of it I've seen, and I don't think that's just because I've seen so much. I think it's because the thing that Dan had said he feared was that the trailer basically explains all of what happens in the movie as far as the emotional. There's nothing. There's no emotional state that is any different than an emotional state depicted in the trailer. So it's sort of like, you know, it is gorgeous. It's a joy to see this book that I loved as a child represented in film, and the way that they did it was spectacular, you know, and there's a lot to love about the movie. It's just that it almost feels like I went in and saw a short film and I walked out and was like, wow, that was a really cool 20-minute film. This was an hour and 50 minutes, you know what I mean? There wasn't anything... Mm-hmm. It just seemed like there wasn't anything there, you know what I mean?
I agree with both you guys.
But gorgeous.
Yeah, and I too enjoyed the opening sequences much more, and set in reality much more than the fantastical stuff. And I'm going to reiterate a lot of what I said at Comic-Con after seeing what we saw, because there was so many things, especially in that opening sequence, that reminded me of the emotions that I had, that I've only had as a child, that I've never had since then, that I've completely forgotten about.
Can I tell you one little quick thing?
Sure.
I got choked up at the beginning because his mom does what you said your mom did, which is write down his stories.
Yeah.
And I got choked up thinking of your childhood.
Yeah, that was pretty special.
Always the director.
And even in that sequence, there was a shot from under the table looking up at the mom that was like, oh yeah, when I used to always hide in little nooks and crannies and everything was looking up.
Yeah.
You know, and just setting my mind, I was like, holy shit. Like, and that feeling of joy of getting the other kids to play with you and then that going wrong. Having older siblings, it resonated me in a way, with me in a way that I never would have expected. And I also want to say that visually, this movie in the hands of any other great filmmaker, like a Tim Burton or a Terry Gilliam, we would have seen German expressionistic, wonderful production design. I mean, think about Sleepy Hollow, with the forest in Sleepy Hollow. It's gorgeous, but it has that very stylized, designed look. In here, it's just a forest. It's just a very mundane woods. But it felt even more special and modern because we had because Spike Jonze's touch knows to create that wonderfully minimal naturalistic cinematography and production design with just a little bit of specialness and those creatures, and once in a while some weird structures. And I thought that was really all an incredible achievement, but I was really bored.
That's too bad.
Very bored.
It's really bummer.
Yes.
Yeah.